Okay, welcome to our July 14th, 2020 Board of County Commission meeting. If we can all stand for a moment of silence and remain standing for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have some presets today. 9:05 is public comment, which it's past that now. 9:30 is to request board direction on options to mitigate the flooding experienced in Hope Heights as a result of the recent extreme rainfall. 1:30 is quasi-judicial appeal consideration of Article 10, appeal by Jeff Dazell regarding building permit number BLD 20190800949 for the replacement of a commercial seawall on property owned by Burr Yacht Sales, Stuart, Florida, LLC. 3 o'clock, we have an executive session pursuant to Florida Statute Section 447.605 for collective bargaining and labor negotiations, and 5:05 public comment. Additional item, Department 8, presentation of the board on CARES, coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security funding. And with that, could I get a...
Mr. Chair, move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Hetherington. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so now we're going to move on to public comment. Ms. Krista.
Yes, sir.
Wait.
Before we get
Hold on
started.
a minute.
What?
Okay. We have a proclamation we need to...
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Is that not on here? Did I miss it, or, I'm sorry.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today, we have a proclamation declaring Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup Week in Martin County, Florida. The 13th annual Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup will be held on Saturday, July 25th, and each year the board makes a presentation in honor of this worthwhile event. This year's proclamation recognizes July 19th through the 25th as Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup Week and encourages residents to participate in this important event. The board would also like to commend the volunteers and sponsors who help make this event such a success each and every year. And here to accept on behalf of the event, we have Brian Polimas.
Thank you all. My name is Brian Polhemus. I'm the owner of Total Life Safety. We are a fire protection saving lives throughout the Treasure Coast for the last 7 years. Just wanted to take a moment to thank you for proclaiming July 19th to the 26th as Waterway Cleanup Week. Total Life Safety is teamed up. We're teamed up and we're partnering with Marine Industries Association of the Treasure Coast and the Florida Inland Navigation District to bring Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup for the 13th year. Thank you guys. If there's anything more we can do, we're here to help. This is Diesel, the TLC fire dog. Thank you.
And then we have the United Way campaign.
Yes, I'm going to kind of start this out. So, as you are aware, we had a United Way campaign for this past year, and Beth Beltran and her division took the challenge to lead our campaign, and she's here. Their goal, as they set out, was for $25,000. That was the largest goal that we, as a county, had ever strived to obtain, and they succeeded that goal and then some. So part of Ms. Beltran's attempt to encourage departments to participate was to create ambassadors in each department. So the ambassadors in each department had the challenge of, getting their employees involved, getting the deductions in your paycheck, collecting the money, explaining to them what the money does. And as you all know, the United Way for Martin County has been essential for us, particularly in these given stressful times. And so I'm, I'm very proud to introduce Beth, I don't know, and Beth has with her Elizabeth Glenn from the United Way. And one of the things that Beth and her team did was they came up with 3 different categories, if you will, for trophies for the departments. And I'll let Beth elaborate on that. So come on. And we're going to give one of the trophies away this morning.
Hi, I'm Beth Beltran, the MPO administrator. I'm here with Joy Peralta. She's with the MPO. And we in the MPO team this year had the opportunity to work with an amazing person, Elizabeth Glenn from the United Way. And she's going to tell you all a little bit about that organization as well as our campaign, and then maybe turn it over to me so we can talk about this big department challenge we had this year.
Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the time and the nice words, Taryn. Thank you so much. But we are so thankful and grateful for the partnership we have with the Board of County Commissioners. We've been partnering since 1972, when your local United Way Martin County, came into existence. So as Taryn mentioned, this year the county set a goal of $25,000, which was a lofty goal. But I'm really excited to announce that you guys did hit your goal. In fact, you went a little bit over. In fact, the total number was $25,299.55. So thank you very, very much. You did it. We're so grateful. These dollars go to fund really essential programs in our community, focusing on United Way's strategic priority areas of education, financial stability, and health. These really are the building blocks of a strong, solid community, and your dollars are really working here locally. So yes, this just highlights our education, financial stability, and health. This past year, the United Way of Martin County invested $2.1 million locally in Martin County within these strategic priority areas. We funded 56 programs. And one thing to note, how these programs that are invested in are selected, it's really the community that decides. It's not United Way board members, it's not United Way CEO or staff members. It is cross-section of the community that come together and volunteers on our citizen review panels. They assess the funding requests that are received, they do site visits, and they really, really closely examine each of these programs to see how they're making the greatest impact in the community. So stay tuned, we'll be announcing which programs will be funded this next year. So in addition to these funded programs, as was mentioned, we've been partnering extensively during this COVID crisis. So we have today a very brief 1-minute video about our efforts regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you all so much. We can't do what we do every single day without support like this. So thank you to the Board of County Commissioners and all the county employees.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to tell you, tell you a little bit about what we did. Joy Puerto was very helpful in helping the rest of the MPO team and myself brainstorm about how we can get people excited and reach our goal. And I have to hand it to both Elizabeth and Terrence. Sometimes we talk to them about kind of some crazy ideas and how we wanted to change things up. And you guys were great. You know, you were like, okay, we can try that. And Elizabeth, especially you, any kind of event we had that we needed a speaker, you were right there. And so one of the things we wanted to do was have a competition between the departments. So we had 3 department challenges. One was the highest number of, who could get the most payroll deductions from their staff by percentage, who could get the most volunteers to register to help volunteer at some of the county-supported United Way functions, and the third one was the highest total revenue. So what we wanted to do today is to announce the first of the 3 winners of the department challenges, and if you could go to the next slide. It was growth management, and I have to say, look at these numbers. I mean, legal and administration, that was impressive to get half of their staff to donate, to pledge some of their paycheck to the United Way campaign. But growth management had almost 70% of their staff to donate to the United Way campaign this year through their paycheck. So we have a trophy for them, and Paul Schilling is here with the department ambassadors, Melody and Maria, to accept the trophy.
Yeah, and important to note is growth management is not one of our largest departments, obviously. So for them to do that, that was really awesome. And Melody was their ambassador along with Maria. They had assisted. So Paul, you should be proud of your team. It's wonderful.
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. Paul Schilling, Growth Management. And it's my pleasure to work with such a great group of individuals who are willing to sacrifice and make sacrifices for the good of others. I can't thank them enough for all their efforts in the entire United Way organization, as well as all the individuals, of course, within our department that have contributed to this endeavor. And it's a real pleasure. And like you said, typically to get 3 out of 4 people agree to do something is not all that common. So thank you very much.
Paul? What do you mean?
Yeah, we strive for 3 out of 5.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to start with our public comment now. Ms. Krista, you have something to
Yes,
read?
sir. We are currently in what we refer to as an election season. We do have county commissioners that are in an active campaign for re-election. Public comment is to address the Board of County Commissioners as a whole. We do not allow partisan politicking, which is defined as advocating the election or defeat of a particular candidate. Use of words, dates, signs, props, and/or wearing apparel or a nameplate that convey a message expressing advocacy for a person or group of persons is also not allowed. So thank you for your cooperation, and you'll have 3 minutes for your comments.
All right, we're going to start with Warren Sharp, followed by Cheryl, I'll get it right eventually, Schwackirk. Sorry.
Good morning, Commissioners. Warren Sharp. I live in Hope Heights, as you all know. I just want to get some guidelines of what's going to happen, some timelines of what's going to be done and when it's going to be done so that we can get on with our lives. One is, when is this cleaning of Kitchen Creek and the South Fork of the St. Lucie River going to be done? Is one of the questions I need answered. I need to know, number 2, if you're going to buy my house and what's going to be done about the water in the neighborhood that has fecal matter in it and is very toxic to the whole area. It needs to be, questions need to be answered and a timeline needs to be given so that we can move on with our lives. I'm tired of living in an apartment, tired of not being able to do what I want to do in my own home. We need some answers. Now, I mean, if you can't give us answers, do we have to go to a legal matter and get this done in a timely fashion? It shouldn't take 3 months for the state to decide what they want to do with us. It's a simple question. We need a simple answer, and we need it now, not 3 months from now. We need it now, plain and simple. Thank you.
Mr. Sharp, the first one, the Kitchen Creek one, I'm actually kind of knee-deep. The Kitchen Creek question you had?
Yes, sir.
I am a little bit familiar with what we're trying to do, so you and I can have a conversation later. If you can contact Colleen, we'll set something up.
Okay,
All right, and I can at least tell you what I know, so.
okay. What about the,
Yeah, and that's true. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, Cheryl's followed by Jill Capio.
Hi, I want to thank everybody for letting me speak today. As always, I want to thank the Martin County Sheriff's Department. They do a great job. I think it's time they start standing with we the people instead of against us. I have to say, last week, your meeting was worse than a circus. The attorney acted like it was her first day on the job. She couldn't find anything for Stacy. When Stacy would ask her a question, she'd be like, I don't understand how the first week we had a 3-0 vote against the mask, and the next week we had a 5-0 mandatory mask. It really saddens me to see that the Republicans up on this board are rhinos. They're not real Republicans. You don't have our best interest at all in what you're doing. It's just the ones who lined your pocket with money. Those are the ones that are interested. Please stand up and stop trying to take away our God-given rights to breathe fresh air. It's against the law and against the Constitution. Every one of you should read the Constitution and learn each and everything in it. I would like to address the water situation. I don't know who to contact. We have a neighbor that has a caving-in septic system, and it stinks ungodly all the time, and the landlord refuses to do anything about it, and I don't know who to contact to even address that issue.
Jim Gordon over there is pointing at himself, so,
All right, thank you, and thank you so much.
no, thank you. Okay, Jill Kappa is followed by William Billy Kappa.
Do you mind if I let my husband go first?
Sure.
Followed by me?
That's fine.
Okay.
Hello. First of all, thanks for the meetings, the workshops, trying to come up with a solution. I know it's got to be hard. At the same time, like Warren said, we just want our lives back. We want answers for our children. The basic questions: Kitchen Creek, how are we going to alleviate the flooding? The water table, that hasn't been done yet. All we've been doing is just shoveling shit against the tide. I mean, that's what we've been doing. We've had optimal drought. We've had Saharan dust. Besides last week, we had rain. The drain, no Don Donaldson today?
He'll be here.
The drainage, wherever Mr. Gordon went, we're now, Hobe Terrace, where the big pump is now connected underground to James Street. The entire neighborhood comes into James Street. I'll speak of my specific area. We have water boiling up out of the drain pipe. Everything's being sucked right now without a pump from our pond retention area. So what I'm getting at is when it rains, everything that comes in where that pump is now is boiling up. I have videos, I have photos from a 30-minute shower the other day. Storm, it rained hard, but for 30 minutes. And it was literally up to our garage doors. I have a 8-inch water table, 8 inches, yesterday's photos, below my house. I mean, from where we are at to June 3rd, 5 weeks later, I mean, more rain's going to come. I know we have plans today. The questions with the comments first. I mean, the comments that we have first, obviously, you guys are going to probably answer a lot of these questions or whatever. I think we should have went after, but where do we go? I'm just brained out from here. It's are you buying our houses? You know, it went from pre-flood to what the current is today, the property value is today or whatever, which makes no sense to us. Are there other assisting monies that can coincide with that? You know, I think there's great ideas with the bottom of Craig Street, making that area larger, you know. I just want to move on with life. I'd love to be able to talk again at the end of this or something if we have more opportunity. I'm just kind of whatever right now. My wife's got stuff written down. She could probably get to it.
Okay, Jill?
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you for meeting
Can I
with us.
pass these? I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you guys want to see these at all?
All right, did I get my, restart my 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so previous to this flooding, and like, you know, we can get, what are we doing now, what are we doing now? But before and I really wish Don Donaldson was here because I guess he's head of the engineering or whatever. But in Hope Heights, before this, haven't flooded in 20 years. And they come and do this drainage system on our project, tear up all our roads, put in these new pipes, and before they did that, it pitched, it ran into our flooded, into our pond. Our pond never once even came near getting up high enough to come near the road. But the rest of the neighborhood didn't really flood either. Now all of a sudden they do this project and everything's pitched into our pond on Craig Street. Everything. And so to me, it's something with the engineering, it's something with the plans, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration in all of this too, is that whatever was done in that project and whoever signed off on that project, that was, yeah, let's make them really efficient, but with no regards to plan B. Where's this water going to go? It went into our pond, but now the pond is over. This 30-minute rain, we were scared it was coming in our house because it got all the way up our driveway again. And if we were supposed to have that second rain that second day, it would have been in our houses again. So we're coming into hurricane season. We're coming on with this. It's a problem. And like my husband said, we just want to move on. Like, yeah, go ahead, buy my house on Craig Street. Make that pond bigger. You know, I don't know, but we just want answers. Like, we are ready to get this ball rolling and go with it. So I appreciate it. And like I said, I wish we would have had this public comment after we talked about this and saw the presentation, but I don't know. We're all frustrated and we just want to move on. But I would like someone to look at that engineering, the plans, whatever you guys did to the drainage system in Hope Heights. That's what I feel like flooded us. So that's it.
Okay, next up is Donna Mack, followed by Mr. Tom Pine.
Good morning, and thanks for letting me speak. I live on Craig Street. I cannot imagine that this would happen to us like this. Like she was saying about the flooding, the last tropical storm we had, they ended up putting 2 pumps in front of my house and pumping it to the dunes on the other side behind the duplexes. And never once, pumping 2 pumps, did that water come back and flood anybody else. And they got it out. They ran the pumps 24/7. I know they did because my bedroom window's right there by that pump, and trust me, it's loud. And they got the water out of there. Why didn't it work this time, using 1 pump? Where's all this water coming from? Why in Martin County is so much water sitting and not moving? Why can't you guys do something about this? I want my life to move on. I just don't even know why I lay awake all night. I can't sleep trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do now. So please, move it so we can get on with our lives. And another, what is up with the testing of the soil? What did you find out? Because my yard's still wet. I've got kids that play on that yard. I've got animals. I need to know what the soil samples were. We haven't heard anything yet. Does anybody know?
You will in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Tom Pine, followed by Tamara Putnam.
Good morning, my name's Tom Pine, I live in Jensen Beach, Florida. It's a sad day for Martin County residents now that free speech at meetings is limited to those of us willing to risk our health in person during this pandemic. While written comments may still be submitted, they are not read, which makes them all but useless. While a couple of commissioners can drone on and on, often indulging in lengthy monologues, it's too many taxpayers that have been sending in written statements to be read at commission meetings that are taking up too much time. 3 minutes max for taxpayers. At the recent workshop dealing with the flooding in Hobe Sound, there was little information to be had. What I did learn was many of these houses have flooded several times, and at least one has flooded 6 times over the years. So how many neighborhoods in Martin County do flood like this on a regular basis? The one I live in does. It usually several times a year. It's been that way for decades, I've been told by neighbors. The National Weather Service has been warning us for several years about the high risk of severe rain and flooding, which we have witnessed several times on national television around the country. Now we've witnessed it firsthand. It will not be the last time. It won't be long before this commission moves to raise our taxes for infrastructure spending, which I will once again vote no, until the committee starts spending our tax dollars on the appropriate manners, which means no more spending our tax dollars on your dreams and wishes. Some of the more wasteful spending over the years has been the illegal expansion of runway 1230, the water park, the mooring field at Jensen Beach Causeway, the millions and millions of dollars we dump in the ocean on a regular basis at Bathtub Beach and Sailfish Point. The beautification of Martin County is another problem where wasteful spending is the norm. Take the useless circle in downtown Rio. At a cost of over $1.5 million, it serves no real purpose. It will soon have some type of art hanging from it. That's what it's for. Thank you for your time and have a great day.
Okay, Tamara is followed by Colby something. I can't read it.
I come to you again, Commissioners. All my sentiments that my previous neighbors have spoken are my sentiments. However, I'm coming to you with questions that I think should be put in writing to us, starting with the fact that you have known, all of you, that our particular area was known to flooding, but you did not disclose it. You didn't make it a point to take a letter and make sure every one of those addresses, which is easy access for you, you collect our taxes, we get our bills. Why was that not disclosed to us? I've been here for 7 years. It was never disclosed to me when I purchased this house. It was disclosed on TC Palm that you were aware of this. Is there not some logistics there? You have known but not taken the money to put in the appropriate. You put in the water system, and just like my neighbor said, immediately we started having problems. When someone has lived there for 50 years, some of our neighbors, and they've never seen this kind of flooding. And just last week, as Billy brought up, I have it on video, I sent an SOS to Don. Said, this is an hour. This is an hour. And we've already got a river flowing on Hope Terrace. We've been here 7 years in hurricanes and never experienced that. We want a second opinion by another, I don't know, I'm not just say GC, but I think at this point, somebody can come in and can actually look at the water system, shut the pipes off for an hour, 2. Look at if there's any water being used. They can monitor that at the water system. Is there water running? Is there a broken pipe? I've asked this question several times. No answer. Why? Were these pipes buried without checking them? Were they turned on prior to burying these pipes? Were they even checked? Is there a crack? These are questions we want answers to. It's been a month. We don't have our water quality test back yet. You've not disclosed that to us. I'm seeing some real issues here. I own my own corporation. I know laws. You guys work for us. And we want questions answered, and we're not getting them. We're not getting them at all. So I would strongly suggest...
Your time's up, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, Colby Bissaw. Wow. I got it? Bissaw. Followed by Leach Jenkins, maybe? Leach?
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the workshop you guys did last week. Unfortunately, there's a lot of unanswered questions. I've lived in my neighborhood 3 years, and I've remodeled my house once already. As I leave here today, I'm going to go to Home Depot, I'm going to get 2 pallets of drywall, I'm going to do it again. If you're only going to pay me the condition, as stated, of current status, you're going to pay me for all my hard work, and I'm going to build it again. The rainstorm over the weekend, in 40 minutes, 2 houses that had already been flooded had water at the door. And I'm not talking garage door, I'm talking front door. This is a systemic issue from the drainage system you guys put in last summer. I had issues with the contractors that did it because they tore up my driveway and repaved it twice because they couldn't measure with the tape. Don Donaldson needs to go back to school for fluid dynamics because honestly, he doesn't understand how water flows and where to put it. Time is out. I've given you guys 3 months to figure it out, and the emails and surveys I get from Don Donaldson says the buyout could take up to a year. My question is to you, which one of the commissioners or the ladies up front, who am I going to live with for a year? Am I going to come live with you, Mr. Jenkins, or Mr. Campy, or Mr. Smith? Who am I going to live with? I'm paying mortgage on a house that I can't live in. Construction starts today. If it floods again, I'll be back in here again. Where does it go? Do I got to lawyer up? Beat you guys up legally? I don't want to do that. I've given you guys more time to figure it out, and I have no answers. I'll lawyer up. That's the only option I got. But remember, my house floods again, I'll tear it down, I'll do it again. I'll continue to do this until you guys have done right by our neighborhood. Thank you.
Lee Jenkins.
Good morning. My name is Leah Jenkins. Basically, I just need some answers today. August 1st, I'll be paying rent and mortgage for the 3rd month in a row. We can't keep going on like this. And I just need answers today. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Larica, there you go. And that is my last speaker form. And then we'll move to Zoom.
Good morning. My name is Erin Larica. Thank you for hearing me today. I am representing Rocky Point neighborhood in regards to the excessive speeding and the drag racing that takes place. I have spoken with Ms. Hurd's office. I've spoken with Todd Schimmelfinnick and Luke Lambert. I've spoken with Ken Breland, who's the county engineer, in regards to the speed limit or the speed tables that were once in Rocky Point. I've gone around our neighborhood and I've collected signatures and spoken with many of the residents who share the same opinion as I do. Something must be done for safety. According to the Florida statutes, speed limits should be set at maximum of 30. Ours is 35. I recognize that with discretion of the commissioners, they can raise it. I would like to know the logic behind raising it to 35. Todd Schimmelfinnick and Luke Lambert both informed me that the last time they conducted a survey, they found that the average speed was 29. If that is true, I don't see why the speed limit can't be reduced down to 25. I'm asking to reimpose the speed tables, not the concrete ones, but the more eco-friendly and economic-friendly and the recycled rubber calming devices. They are also preferred by emergency vehicles. I know that's a concern with some of the elderly that live in our neighborhood. I do recognize that stop signs cannot be used as a measure to curb speeding, but they can be used to prevent collision. There are many almost collision accidents throughout the neighborhood. I'm requesting that there be more stop signs placed specifically at Anchor in Horseshoe, Robertson in Horseshoe, a four-way stop at Cuban in Horseshoe, one place before Hinckley Marine on Boatway and Robertson. And whatever happens on Horseshoe Point Road also needs to be replicated on Major Way, because from my understanding and speaking with a lot of the neighbors, that is what the issue was with the speed tables in the first place. Next time you see me, I will have more signatures. I have well over 250 right now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Merker, you are up.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have one speaker, and I'm sorry, we have one speaker, and it is Benjamin. Benjamin, you please unmute and state your full name.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Benjamin McDowell. I lived at 7364 Southeast James Street, and once again, I echo the sentiments of my neighbors in trying to determine from you and understand how we're supposed to move forward with life. At this point in time, I have two little girls, one that's 4, one that's 2, and since I just recently found out, last week, found out that I have a third little girl. That's what we're going to be having on November 12th. Obviously, our lives have been turned upside down. Don't know exactly how we're supposed to proceed forward. I appreciate, as has been stated already, I very much do appreciate what you are doing to try to help us as a commission, and we acknowledge that you're working. On the other hand, we desperately need answers. The survey that was sent out to us by Don Donaldson, first of all, we were one of the homes with water completely over the receptacles. And so, the one question was, are you still having problems with your septic system? Well, the answer is I don't even have commodes anymore to know that answer. If the option of raising the homes was one of the things that was mentioned, our septic systems would fail. The water that just came up almost into our homes again in a 30 to 40-minute rain, obviously our septic systems, where the water was just gushing back in after they were trying to pump it out, the water table is such that it wouldn't work again. And so we just need to know, we need to know quickly, and frankly, we're not very interested in losing money on something that is not necessarily our problem and stems back to an issue with the county not knowing how to deal with water in that neighborhood. And so thank you very much for what you're doing, but please, please, please help us to know very quickly how we need to proceed from here and help fix this problem. Thank you.
You are muted. You are unmuted.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, with that, we're going to move on to our 9:30 preset. We're only 16 minutes late. Department 3, request for board direction on options to mitigate the flooding experienced in Hope Heights as a result of the recent extreme rainfall. Mr. Don Donaldson and Jim Gordon will be presenting.
Sure. Sorry.
Commissioners, we have a Don Donaldson, Deputy County Administrator, and Jim Gordon as our Public Works Director. Jim's going to start us off by we have a few slides are repeats, but just to set the stage, and then Jim's going to talk about the project that he's been working with Captech Engineering on in the state of Florida and submitting for a hazard mitigation grant through the Department of Emergency Management. And then I'll speak to some of the other survey results, including the fecal coliform results. Thanks.
Okay, Jim Gordon, Public Works Director, for the record. As Don said, we have a couple of slides that are just going to background on how we got here, and the reason we have them in the presentation is just so we have a complete presentation for the record. So I'll move through those as quickly as I can. This is a rainfall slide that shows the average rainfall throughout the county. Hope Sound had 27 inches, and some areas of Hope Sound had 34 inches, which is 54% of the average annual rainfall.
Jim, could you speak a little
closer to it? Okay. The next one is a slide that shows the surface water flow in blue, and that shows that on the north area of the neighborhood, this is broken into drainage basins. So the north area of the neighborhood here, all of the water flows into the Craig and James Street retentions, and in this area here, water flows toward the Peacock retention. It does get caught in these smaller retentions as well. And then on the very south end of the neighborhood, water flows south to the intersection of Dove Street and Parkway Drive. These green lines show where the groundwater flow is. So groundwater flow is generally west to east. This next slide is a cross-section of the groundwater elevations on the LIDAR map, which is a colored map. The colors of LIDAR, the difference in the colors show difference in elevation. The white is very high, the green is very low, and the reds and yellows are in between the two. So you can see where the ponds are here. This is the Craig and James Street, Sandpiper, Peacock, Pelican, and then you also see on the other side of the road, this is some lakes that are in the MacArthur Golf Course. We've done a cross-section here that shows the black lines are the ground elevation. This is US 1, this is Eagle Ave, elevation 37. The blue line, we've got piezometers throughout the neighborhood, and this blue line shows where the groundwater table is. The important thing that this is trying to demonstrate is anywhere this blue line is above the black line, that means the groundwater elevation is actually higher than the ground surface. So that's the water we're seeing. So right here is Craig and James retention. You've got a groundwater table that's almost 4 feet higher than the ground elevation in that retention. And you don't see it every day because we're actively pumping that water, but that water actually, if we didn't pump, would equalize out at this elevation. So why are we seeing flooding? Both of these photos were taken Saturday evening, and it was a rain event that lasted about an hour, a little bit more than 3 inches of rain in less than an hour. So we're seeing all of this water run off. The reason that water is running off is because we have elevated groundwater, no soil storage, we have no wetland storage. And what that means is every drop of rain that falls, normally it would collect into a wetland or it would collect in the soil before it discharged off into the right-of-ways into our drainage system, but they're full. So what's happening is that water's just running off and kind of shotgunning straight down to our lower areas. So we're seeing septic drain field impacts, throughout the community. And we also have slope stability issues. We've got some seawalls that are failing because of the high groundwater table, and we also have some ditch embankments that are starting to fail because that groundwater is trying to work its way out, find the low points, and the low points are our ditches, and that's causing some slope stability that we're addressing. And finally, that's increased runoff and ponding. Just wanted to point out that the photo on the right is Manatee Creek subdivision, so this is not unique just to Hope Heights, and the photo on the left is Poinciana Gardens. So they're both areas that have been in that same area that was impacted by the rainfall. They didn't have quite as much rain as Hope Heights did, but we're seeing the same thing throughout the county, where it's much flashier than what we're used to seeing, where water just exits out of those wetland areas and natural areas very quickly, where in the past it didn't. Here's a graphic that shows our flooded homes with damage. Total homes at Hope Heights with water entering the main living space is 20. This is the HMGP grant, which is the hazard mitigation grant that we've applied for through the state. It's FEMA funding, and we had already applied for this. We've applied the last 2 years for Hope Heights, but we already applied this year, but it was split into phases because we didn't know how much funding would be available. After talking with Division of Emergency Management, they asked us to combine the two projects together. So we did that, and so what we submitted to them is a formal pump system, which is 3 pumps that aren't portable pumps. They're actual pump houses that would sit in the low areas, one on Craig Street, one on Peacock Street, one on Parkway. We would do property acquisition of the low-lying homes. We did some analysis that you'll see on future slides on homes that are at risk, even if we have pump systems in place. So we would recommend acquisition of those very low-lying homes that are still at risk, even with an improved system. What we would do with those properties is remove the homes, remove soil from the lots that they were in, and increase our retention pond capacity in those areas. And then we would also raise the roads above a 10-year one-day storm, because right now, even if homes weren't flooded, we would still have a condition where roads are flooded and people can't get through and emergency services can't get through. So we would have to raise the roads in the areas that we acquired those homes and get them up and dry. So this is a no-action scenario map that shows low-lying homes that are at risk within the Hope Heights community. There's actually 54 of them. And if I go back a couple slides, this is the LiDAR data. Greens show kind of low areas, and if you see this kind of trend where that green area is, that matches up with where our modeling has shown us that these are finished floor elevations that would intersect with floodwaters in a significant storm, a 100-year, 3-day storm. So there's 54 homes that are at risk if we did no action, which is part of the analysis for our grant submittal. This is the recommended action for acquisition based on our analysis. So these are the 13 properties highlighted in light blue that show properties that even if we added a pump station would still be at risk of flooding. That most of them are centered around Craig and James Street. We've got 2 on Peacock Street, and then we've got the 2 duplexes down on the end. This is all driven by finished floor elevation and computer modeling through ICPR, which is just a stormwater model that we use for flood analysis. So there's 13 properties that we've recommended for acquisition based on those elevations. Also on this figure is the proposed outfall route for the pump station. So we would bring high pressure lines out to Eagle, and then Eagle up to Osprey Street up to behind, this is the new Publix, and it's going to run through there behind the fire station and then out to East Fork Creek. So it'll be a direct discharge. So that's kind of what we proposed. That is what we proposed to DEM. We had a conversation with DEM multiple times last week as we were developing that proposal. They've got the formal submittal on Friday, and they've indicated to us that they will complete the review in 90 days or less. So typically that takes 6 to 9 months, but they're expediting it. If they have no request for information, it could be even quicker than that. But that's the commitment they made was 90 days at the very outlying number. So with that, Don's going to take the next slide.
So as Jim talked about the project that's proposed, last meeting the board asked if there was an option to elevate properties to get them out of the floodplain. Prior to last week, we really didn't have an established benchmark of an actual elevation that you could say, what is the 100-year risk? And the model that they ran was based upon the existing groundwater elevation. So when the groundwater elevations are lower, which we've seen in the past, you can have more flood protection. But we did run the model based upon the current condition. So that's where you come up with those 54 properties are currently at risk based upon the current water elevations in the ground. Looking at an elevation project, we've done a couple of projects in the past, for instance, like St. Lucie Settlement, and there's been a few in Sewell's Point. The typical cost is about $55 a square foot, but I think what we've seen is around $100,000 a property by the time you put in just elevating the house, and then you have to, provide stairs, or how do you get to the floor, and then how you reconnect and re-slope the ground, or whether it's a stem wall or a pier foundation. And the other complicating factor in that is those programs have also been developed where the property owner actually contracts with the contractor, and then the county administrates the grant on behalf of the federal government, and it's a reimbursement. So after the work is done, or through progress payments, you get reimbursed over the time, which is obviously a complicating matter for most property owners to develop the funds necessary to have access to, $50,000 to $100,000 or more to pay as you go. And then finally, as was mentioned earlier, and some of the residents, that the being on a septic tank, all of the projects that done in the past all were hooked to municipal sewer prior to there being an elevation project. So that's a key element, really, and so that at this point in time, we're not recommending elevation being considered, because first you have to develop a sewer system for the neighborhood, which from the last meeting the board has, we have sent a letter to South Martin Regional Utility. They have stated that they are in the process of preparing a cost estimate to either do a gravity sewer or a forced main grinder system like we've used in the past. But again, as you know, those projects take some time to develop and implement. So with that being said, our recommendation is not to include elevation at this time in the neighborhood, simply because the sewer is not there. And as Jim pointed out, some of the complications in having the groundwater being so high, and if this is a new reoccurring theme, or is this a historic aberration. It certainly seems we're seeing more conditions like this. So again, the elevation would need a lot more analysis to see if it's worthwhile. We're moving on. We did send out a questionnaire, and you can't read the questions there, but we asked what is the maximum depth measured in inches entering the living space in your home. While we have water elevation data, and we could estimate based upon the finished floors, we know there were a few residents who stated that they'd had some flooding that was not identified, so we wanted to make sure that anybody that received the survey had an opportunity to let us know. And we certainly did capture one additional house that their garage was higher than their living room, and they did have water in their house, and so we added that one to the list. We also asked, as of July 7th, are you still having problems with your septic systems? So we were looking to see if they are in their homes. We know that a number of you are not, but what problems they're having in the system. And then we asked if a home buyout was offered, would you participate in the program, yes or no? If a home elevation program raising the finished floor of your home was offered, would you participate in the program, yes or no? If both buyout and elevation project were available, which would be your preference, buyout or elevation? If a home program was offered for the appraised value of your home in the current condition, would you participate in the program, yes or no? And then our final question would, if a home buyout program was offered but would take over a year to complete, would you still be participate in the program, yes or no? And we are still getting some results in last night, but the general statistics were that 67% of the residents preferred an acquisition project over an elevation. 50% stated they would participate in a program appraised at current condition. 38 would participate even if acquisition project took over a year to resolve. And then, of course, 70% still had problems with their septic system, which is evidenced by the data that staff still collects on those piezometers, seeing that the groundwater has receded very little actually in the last few weeks. So it seems to be we're keeping up with the additional rainfall, but it's not receding at a rate that is giving appreciable relief. So, what, in terms of, a lot of questions, what you do now, obviously we have a grant application in, which is a significant amount of money to do the project, over $8 million, which would include the acquisition of the properties, the removal of those properties, scraping them down, the elevation of the roads, the construction of the outfall, and the installation of the pump system. I think it's important to note that the Division of Emergency Management had not looked favorably on our project in the past. I think it's with Gail Harrell and Toby Oberdorf and Marilyn Mager's support that they pushed the EM to relook at this. I think the other thing, the unfortunate tragedy in this is that the groundwater is so high that the threat is significantly worse than it ever has been in the past. And those model runs that CapTech has provided for us showed evidence of that severity of it. So that, I think, has changed certainly our previous predictions on the level of severity here in terms of what the condition, the flood risk is. We now have a numeric base of what that flood risk is. And following up on this, we will, the county engineer will be sending a letter to all 54 property owners, letting them know that our analysis of the risk, it's certainly not a federal risk assessment and won't mandate flood insurance, but we will advise them of our current modeling results, which we did not have in the past. So support for homeowners, I know that they don't like hearing this, but certainly flood insurance until there is the groundwater recedes and we have a permanent pump station is certainly recommended. It's not mandatory, and it won't be mandatory until such times as that the federal flood maps are amended, if they're amended. So. Then there's the CARES Act funding that we have available that we're still, which is really a county-wide program that we'll be looking for, developing a program to provide assistance to property owners. There's, for instance, whether it's rent or mortgage or utility bills, those types of things. And depending upon how that program is rolled out, a lot of those you have to have evidence of loss of job or some sort of COVID-related experience. The home fund, we have Red Cross and other nonprofits which we've been talking to. Unfortunately, as some of our other government aid programs are income restricted, and the income level to qualify is fairly low, and most of the property owners, as I understand, don't qualify for them. So we're trying to work with the Red Cross and others on how what funds would be available and what programs we can use that we can customize to Hope Heights that would help in either the rebuilding of the home or rent assistance or other assistance that may help. And so that leads us to the final slide, which is what is our current recommendation for the day. And it's a sort of a long list of bullets, but I think it's pretty simple in the current context, which is things that we're already working on, but just to formalize staff to create the CIP sheet to formalize the current pump system to the north. The pumping to the west had been an alternative only in the sense that when you had plenty of storage in the groundwater, it worked in those previous events. It clearly does not work now and could not be relied on as a long-term solution. At least the pumping to the north is a dedicated outfall ultimately into East Fork Creek. We keep using emergency orders and reissuing them on a regular basis so that we can continue to pump across private property, operate pumps without a surface water management permit, and we will continue to do that until the level of risk is receded, where we don't have to pump every time there's a 1-inch rainstorm. So that's bullet number one. The next is to direct staff to take any and all necessary efforts to pursue the HMGP grant. And of course, we did submit the grant. You authorized us to submit it in the past. However, we made significant modifications to it last week, and part of your motion would be to confirm that you endorse the revised project, because we did tell the state that we were going to provide the match, which is approximately $2 million that would be required of local funds to fund the 75-25 split. And then the third bullet is to direct staff to apply to other DEB grants. And of course, that bullet is, I'm sure what the audience doesn't want to hear, but in the event that we were unsuccessful or the state did not award the grants, is to look at other alternatives while we're doing this to see what funds might be available for flood risk grants. Most of the funding in the state right now is geared towards water quality mitigation, treatment of water, and so purely flood risk projects are less available types of funds. So that's why we really need to pursue the HMGP grant is the most significant, most important funding that's available. And for that's why we ask you to endorse, which I know you will, which is to direct staff to reach out to our legislative delegation, and that is to use whatever means we can to both get the DEM to approve it, and to approve it in an expeditious manner. Staff will certainly respond to any questions. Technical, we expect there will be quite a bit of. Normally, there is a lot of technical exchange between the state on how the models are run or the assumptions in the data, but our team is ready to respond. And I believe that Joe Capra and the Public Works staff did a good job of putting the project together, and up to the very last minute, last Thursday night, we were working on that project to get it to get it in by Friday. And then finally, we certainly say direct staff to work with our nonprofits to find assistance to rebuild the damaged homes, which we've reached out to. And then the last bullet is direct staff to assist Hope Heights residents with applications for CARES Act. We know the CARES Act funding is and how it can be used is complicated, and so we would dedicate some staff specifically to assisting how Hope Heights staff could, Hope Heights residents could fit into some of those categories. So that's our recommendation. We did, before I turn it over to the board, we talked to the health department about the sampling of the soils. They do not sample soils, apparently. They only sample water. So we hired our own contractors to go out and do soil samples. We do have results. A number of the areas came out non-detectable, and other areas had concentrations of fecal coliform in the soil. Getting a health professional to determine whether or not they exceeded a condition that was what a numeric value meant, we don't have that information, other than we will send this out to everybody on the mailing list, the results, to try to advise you on, in the water, there's certain bacterial count limits that's when you see advisories posted at our boat ramps and others when they exceed a certain limit. They don't have the similar guideline for soils. So we're flying a little bit in the dark here, other than we can provide the information and the data. Certainly those where you had undetectable limits are certainly beneficial, and those areas that had higher concentrations, I think it will ultimately have to be, unless we get a health professional that can give us more guidance, it'll be the up to the residents determine the risk factor based upon current information. And with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, Don and Jim, thank you for, at least last week, we asked for maps that included all the homes that had been impacted to some extent, so we could really get a much, I think, broader picture of exactly where we were, which you showed us, and I think that's very helpful. Second, thank you for getting the questionnaire out and starting to get the results back, because I think that also helped frame, I think, people's wants, if you will, and gives a little bit better picture as to exactly where people think things should go. I guess, Don, what I would ask you in the first part of the motion or the recommendation, I would like, unless you don't think it's a good idea, I would like to modify it a little bit. I think when we put a CIP project together and we adopt one, for a lot of good reasons, there will be other people looking at that CIP language to see how it best fits what we may be applying for other grants, other things that may be not listed here today. In years past, we have been significantly successful in doing both flooding and stormwater quality projects together, and in our rankings and when we go for grants, because stormwater quality was certainly the driving force behind it, I think we did better than, and as you, I think, mentioned in your comments, if we were just doing a flooding application, that may not rank as well as stormwater quality. And my hope is, out of all of this and going through this acquisition program, is that we will create a stormwater program and project in the neighborhood that will in fact do water quality. Because at the end of the day, this water is going to travel north if that route is the chosen one that you illustrated, and eventually that water will be making its way through the East Fork River?
Yes.
East Fork to Manatee Pocket. And so in all the projects we have done, we have gone to great lengths to make sure that water quality at the end of the day, when it reaches into Manatee Pocket or into the river, wherever it may discharge to, is as good a water quality as we can get it to. So in the direct staff to create a CIP project to formalize the current pump system to the north that includes engineering design, land acquisition, and construction, I would suggest that we also add in there language that absolutely highlights that this is a water quality STA project for water quality for the future, that we embed in that language, and everything that we do moving forward references that, because we will be judged eventually, I think, in past experience on what that says and what was our intent to begin with. And it may seem like semantics a little bit for the public, but I think it'll be important to us long term, relative to when we make the arguments with the Water Management District and DEP relative to funding and whether we should rank higher than somebody else should be. I think that'll put us in a better place. I'll leave that all up to you to figure out how best to word that. Mr. Chairman, if there's a motion, I would highly suggest that we include a water quality / STA project, as well as the formalizing the current pump system to the north and so on. Second part of that, in the third bullet, where it says direct staff to apply for DEP and other agency grants for pumping station projects. Have we talked to the Water Management District at all? Have we been in communication with them as well?
Just in terms of our emergency pumping operation, and
I guess what I'm thinking more in lines of funding and having some form of application to them as well. Have we talked about that at all?
Since the budget has been approved, prior to that, my discussions with the Water Management District, because they were only funding projects that were related to Everglades restoration, and they didn't have any local project funding. Although I think with some of the legislative funds, St. John's Water Management District was getting some of the Indian River Lagoon funds was being funneled through them, and there may be some funds funneled through the Water Management District. But again, we left the term other agencies. Certainly we'll reach out to them to see if there's any funding. It's just that as of today, I was unaware of a program that they had that we would fit in for.
And
this.
again, maybe for semantics, but can we at least list them in the language that that both we apply to DEP and not just other agencies, but Water Management District and other agencies? Unless you don't think that.
No, I think that's fine, and I think
Okay.
this was an attempt to get a.
No, I appreciate it, and just little nuance issues, but I think they will allow us, I think, to make the argument further down the road, and be a little bit more solid on that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we include, if it's okay with everybody, those changes or additions to the language, and that we recommend all the other bullet points that staff has presented.
Okay. Commissioner Heatherington.
Thank you. I have, on SRMU, you said your update for SRMU that they were contacted by letter per direction last week, and that they were doing a cost estimate. Does that mean that they're willing to proceed forward, or strictly cost estimate, and then they're going to get back to us whether they're willing to connect?
My previous, unless Jim, you want to speak to it, as my understanding, you can clarify, is that the SMRU is willing to extend sewer into neighborhoods, but they don't have any capital funds which would supplement it in any way whatsoever. So if someone else pays for all the infrastructure, they will accept them into their system and accept the new customers you provide. Jim, if you can add anything to that, I would.
Yeah, and I had a discussion with their director, and what she said was, it's not programmed in their CIP. They don't have a CIP project for Hope Heights, but they do have capacity, and they would be willing to extend it if funding became available.
Did they indicate that they were going to be applying for grants, or
Well, we had a brief dialogue about that, was that there is DEP funding available for septic to sewer, and either they or us could apply for that grant for that system. It would be their system, but we could be co-applicants on it, and we did have a discussion about if that would be a good project, and they'd be willing to build it if they did have some grant opportunities. So that is one that we're going to include in our DEP just opened up some funding opportunities.
So I
That
think
is
we
one of
should
the
apply
septic
for
to
that
sewers
grant.
that we're applying for, yeah. So we also have a county-wide one that we're applying for septic to sewer for Old Palm City, but this will be a standalone for Hope Heights.
Okay. So we're, then, just to be clear, we're going to be applying for that grant
That's
for the
correct.
extension. We, as in the county, and
We as in the
SRMU will
county and
be
SMRU will be
a
co-signers or
co-applicant.
whatever.
I think if that's something I would add that to your bullet item. If you want to direct staff to prepare it, I think we would need, it has not been a project on ours either. There's about 300 homes there, I understand.
Right.
So you're probably looking at a $4 or $5 million project to service Hope Heights.
Can I?
Please.
So you're suggesting that an additional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a seventh bullet point should be that we add a CIP sheet, or what was the add?
I think
Like
you're
a grant.
adding, yes, I think if you're asking us to submit a grant application for Hope Heights, either jointly or independent of SMRU, to request septic to sewer funds, then I'm just simply suggesting that you add that as part of your motion, is
But does that
direct
need
staff to
but does
apply
that need
for
to be accompanied by a CIP, or no?
we will create a CIP, sure.
Okay.
Commissioner Smith, you?
Good on that? I
On
still have a
that
couple more
point, yeah,
questions.
thank you.
So the project that you put together, and I think applied for Friday, what's the anticipation of that, and what would that project do? And what kind of timeline are you looking at getting information back?
So the project would provide a 30-inch pump, which is, we're using a 10-inch pump right now on Craig Street, so it would be a 30-inch on Craig Street, where we'd replace a 6-inch pump on Peacock with a 24-inch pump, and a 6-inch pump on Parkway with a 18-inch pump. So you have a lot more capacity to move that water. You don't have a human being turning that pump on and off. It would be on a float system, so when the water reached a certain level, the system kicks on automatically. It has it's an electric pump with a backup generator, so if we lose power during a hurricane, the system still runs. So all of those, so it's an automated system that would provide pumping. The DEM has indicated to us that they'll do the review within 90 days. So we'll know within 90 days if that funding's available or not. And then if it is available, then we can start entering into contracts for acquisitions, and we can start putting together the project itself. Meanwhile, we're working on permitting. In the interim, in these 90 days, we're also working on the permitting because we are in preliminary design and we're doing final design currently, and we have to get permits from, depending if we go north, we also have another option to go east, and we're permitting both because there may be hurdles with one or the other, and this way, worst case scenario, you've got two options. So all of that's going to be happening within that 90 days.
Okay.
Just to be clear on the construction of a pump system and stuff like that would take time to procure and bid, like, for instance, but the acquisitions of properties could not take place until we actually formally entered into the contract with the state, and then we would have to follow the procedures that are outlined in the grant. So if you get notification in let's say 90 days, it would take some time to get that contract executed with the state, and simultaneously, I'm sure we would be getting appraisals or whatever, having seen the grant language, but offers could not be made until we got approval from the state. So I just want to be clear that from the time you receive notification that award is going to be done, which would be good news, you still have to go through the bureaucracy of getting the contracts executed and approval before you can spend the money. Otherwise, they won't reimburse us for the activities that we perform.
What is the typical time frame for that? 30 days or?
Its typical time frame is more like 2 to 3 months, but I think obviously we're pushing for this, and it's certainly a high priority, and we'd be working with our so getting our delegation to help us get the grant, and we would be bending their arm to make sure that their staff gave us the contracts and executed them expeditiously. But I would still say from the time you receive a notice of award to the time you could actually offer a contract would probably be a couple of months. So if you had 3 months, if they waited to the last minute to notify us 3 months, you were looking at 5 months from today before you would know you can actually make an offer to somebody.
I can tell you that their bureau chief for mitigation at the state level, we have their attention, and they're very actively engaged in this project, so they're going to try to push it through as quickly as possible. But they too have to jump through a lot of hoops through the bureaucracy of the system. So,
Okay. And then the CIP sheet and the bullet point number 1, is that coming back to us? Or does that, because we already went through the CIP process, so how, is that coming back to us
It
for
would come
approval?
back
Yes.
typically as an OMB item, just as a, we're going to continue to work on it, but it would be, the formal process would come back to you at your next meeting.
The CIP sheet will have to come back because we're going to have to look at funding and how this $2 million would impact our budget, because as you know, next week we start our budget workshops. So staff would like
to. You said $2 million, where did you get that number?
Well, the project itself is over $8 million, and the county, if we don't get the grant, we'd be on the hook for the full $8 million. If we do get the grant, we have a 25% match. So that would be a little over $2 million that then the county would have to match that grant, because it's a 75-25.
Okay.
So we will have to look at our funding mechanism and where those funds would come from, because, as you said, the CIP's already been approved. So we've got projects that would be impacted because we would need to dedicate that $2 million, some change, to that grant. We've made that as a commitment. Part of the grant application is the county commits that we will come up with that match.
Yes, that's why we need your agenda today to endorse so that we
To move forward.
so that we can verify that we told the state the truth.
That's all for me, Chair.
Just to further include in my motion, that I would add that seventh bullet item to my motion, which was to also to submit that grant application and include that, and that would be for the septic sewer portion.
Sewer, right.
That we also include that either in the one CIP or as a separate CIP item. It doesn't really matter, however you best decide that that should be done.
Sure.
It'll be separate.
It'll be a separate CIP. And just two other pieces on all of this and that. One is that last session, and if this conflicts us, then it's more to look into it and have Chloe help us kind of understand whether we should or shouldn't. There were multiple individual septic to sewer requests in session last year. It may be worth having a separate standalone item for a given project. However, we've also been advised through multiple different organizations and stuff that member projects are going to be very thin next year given the current budget issue we're dealing with COVID. So that may be a moot point, that asking for something like that may be way out of the box of what the legislature is willing to fund one way or the other. But if there is that, we should at least ask for it, I think, unless we find that that's conflicting us against our grant program, that someone may say, well, you asked for the grant over here, but you're also asking for a special request over here, and you got to pick one direction or the other.
Correct.
And my preference would be that we would absolutely go the grant route versus the legislative route, because agency money will be much more solid, if you will, than a single member.
Well, Commissioner, to your point, that's one of the reasons why we are highly recommending and trying to encourage SMRU to participate with us, so we're not competing against our own project requests.
Understand. And the only other thing, just as a by way of the timing issue, and I don't want to have anybody in the audience leave with false expectations other than what we witnessed with DOT and how they handled the bridge under the emergency order that was done with the bridge, and how quickly they put things out to bid and how quickly those bids were received and chosen. I mean, literally within weeks, not even within a week, they awarded contracts and they were moving forward on projects of clearly significant importance. At every chance we get, we should remind those that are looking at the timelines on these things and saying, look, if we can do it with this agency, we can do it with any agency. That says, if the typical timeline, to the question of if that's 3 months, why can it not be done in a week or 2 weeks? How do we get through those hurdles as FDOT got through those hurdles with the bridge very quickly? Can we mirror that process somehow? Is there a way to do that? And I'm sure if we all put our heads to it, they can do faster and better than they normally would do. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Commissioner Campy.
Thank you very much. Two quick things. One, I think that what needs to be said, even though it might be difficult, is that if this is the appropriate plan with those large pumps that you mentioned, Mr. Gordon, and Mr. Donaldson's strategy of purchasing and the houses and the acquisitions, that is the appropriate plan, and we all agree that that's the appropriate plan. Whether we get the grant money from Tallahassee or not, the project needs to move forward. So I think that while that process is playing out in Tallahassee, and I appreciate that it'll be as fast as possible, the planning, the permitting, and the bidding here locally should not wait until we find out if in 60, 70, 90 days we got it or not. We should be doing it automatically, because the situation doesn't go away whether Tallahassee agrees that there's a situation or not. And the remedy doesn't go away whether Tallahassee agrees that that's an appropriate remedy or something they want to participate in. We need to tell the citizens here that we're doing it no matter what. So ideally, from our point of view, we want the money, the lion's share of the money, to come from Tallahassee. But if it doesn't, we're still going to owe the citizens a remedy. Now, we don't need to get into, and I know that we heard some public comment this morning that it never did this before we got started. Now, I have seen projects done by our staff, and I know our staff, and I know from the outside looking in, it's easy to determine, say, well, they must have messed it up. But I would tell you, and I would be in the same boat with the residents, so when I hear that anxiety in your voices, that uncertainness, financial uncertainness, or when we hear from Benjamin, who's got a baby on the way, and he's got 2 little kids, and you got family members asking questions, and you don't have the answers that you're supposed to have as the potentially the head of the household, or a single mom who's trying to explain to her young children, and we know that some of that is the situation. We have to have an answer no matter where the money comes from. So I would recommend strongly, and I hope my colleagues would agree, that the planning and the permitting and the bidding has to happen no matter what. Because if we get good news, we'll be ahead of the game from Tallahassee. And if we get bad news, we're going to need to do something anyway. And then Ms. Krista and Jennifer Manning and our other administrative staff will have to come up with some Plan B option, because in my mind at least, the concept of not doing it doesn't exist. So we're either going to pay for it through this first strategy, which I like, or a different strategy. It's going to have to be paid for. So I wouldn't wait to find out what happens. Although I feel encouraged, and I'd like the residents to know that you've been fantastic coming to our meetings, and I know that it disrupts your day, but I'd want you to know that, we're really on this issue, the board, but especially the staff, because the staff has to do all of the work. I would start writing letters to, maybe Mr. Donaldson or Mr. Gordon can give you a list of who the key players are in Tallahassee. It can't hurt. I know you're 100% invested, so emails, phone calls, letters, sometimes if they're on the fence, because remember the COVID issue punched the state budget right in the face, but there's still a ton of money. Some people will get that money and others won't. So not to give you additional work to do, but there is power in hearing from the constituents. Those pictures that you passed around, there's power in those photographs. There's power in your personal set of circumstances. Especially the folks, and I've been in the same situation. You make too much money to qualify for anything, but you don't make so much money that this is something that you could just easily write a check to cover additional expenses. Most people can't cover additional expenses that were not in the plan. So I would strongly recommend even though the governor's office gets tons of letters, they don't just put them in a box and throw the box away. Someone up there is looking at that mail. Someone up there is looking at those emails. So just as an added thing, maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, but I would tell you that when we here locally receive information, not angry kind of, shame on you, we all understand that brings up barriers. But if you tell your real story, we've been out there. Most of us have been there and know your stories. But the woman, and she's not here today, who suffered 2 strokes in a row and then lost every single thing she owned, those of you that are just redid your homes and then had to have them sledgehammered out, that could help. I know it works for us here locally. I think it would help that way too. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Heatherton.
Yeah, I would like to ask Public Works to come back with an item. I'd like to see the whole picture of the county, kind of unrelated to this, but related to, we're going into budget workshop in July, and if there's $2 million here and $2 million there, I'd like to see sort of an analysis of the whole county. You know, maybe there's issues in Palm City Farms or Rustic Acres, or so there's problem areas and things that we need to address. So a presentation from Public Works on this scenario countywide, so we know what we're looking at going forward. It's hard to allocate, you know, a couple million here and a couple million there when you don't know what the whole picture is around the county.
Yeah, we actually have a draft prior, it's been a few years, but the board asked us to pursue a stormwater utility for the county to address drainage countywide. And so the board allocated funding at that time to hire the consultant to do that initial study. We have that draft. It was phase 1, if I remember correctly. So we have that report, if you will, prepared based on the fact that the county was looking at a countywide solution, which would be a stormwater utility, which would provide funding. Every resident pays into it, every commercial parcel pays into it. It's based on, because it's a utility, it's based on the impact, if you will, to the whole system. So residential homes have one calculation that is performed, and then the commercial facilities, because of their impervious area, would have a different calculation, if you will. So we've gone through that. When was the report finalized, Jim?
It was finalized last,
December or November?
yeah, November of last year.
Yeah.
So that's the funding mechanism, but
funding.
obviously,
But
to put together the funding mechanism, you've identified parts in Martin County that have drainage or stormwater issues that need to be addressed?
Correct. So every 2 to 3 years, we perform a stormwater needs assessment, and that touches on both water quality and flooding issues. We just awarded that contract to a consultant to do the update. The last time it was done was in 17. So I think that would be, we can either present the data from 17, or we can present the new data once that report is completed of the stormwater needs assessment, which includes water quality and flooding weaknesses within the county. And it prioritizes them and lets you know where each of those things stand.
I'd like to see that prior to we do the budget workshop.
Yeah,
I
we
can
start
get you
on
the-
Monday. I don't think.
Yeah, I can get you the 17 one.
Yeah.
This week.
Stacy,
Yeah.
I could get you, Commissioner,
I'll look
I could
at
get
it.
you the 2017 one, and then it'll give you an idea of what we're looking at.
I thought budget
I mean,
was the
even though,
following week.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, even though we go through the budget process next week, we would still have the option to go back and analyze those projects and the funding that we've set aside specifically for stormwater and those projects, and then maybe reprioritize if that's the will of the board. So just because we're getting the budget done next week doesn't mean, now with that said, you won't have the ability to raise additional taxes to fund those projects. So we would have to take from what we have. Right now, the budget's been put together without a tax increase moving forward for next year. So we would have to look within our means if we were going to do some funding options.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I do believe this project alone exceeds the entire budget of the stormwater program as you currently have adopted.
Yes.
Okay. Jill, CapTech Engineering was the name of the company you were asking? And CapTech, well, he's actually sitting in the back of the room there, but yeah. He'll give you a card. And going to Kitchen Creek, Mr. Sharp, that conversation is probably even more complicated than the conversation we're having now. We're actively working on it. One thing I can say is that we are currently replacing an undersized culvert on the Kitchen Creek ditch. We've also identified some deficiencies. Our environmental people, John Mayo and I, and his crew are working on some long-term solutions, which will, I mean, it's a separate project, but kind of connected to what we're talking about, lowering groundwater. So that's a conversation that I would actually like to have with you, maybe over the phone. So if you would, again, talk to Colleen. I don't know, Jim, if you've got anything to add to without getting it too deep into the weeds with...
Without getting too deep, just Kitchen Creek really used to have 3 flowways historically, and two of those flowways are blocked through development and through changes in land use. So that project would restore the eastern flowway is the one that we're talking about right now. So it'll provide more opportunity for water to flow south underneath Bridge Road and into the Kitchen Creek floodplain, which will help. It's a benefit environmentally for Kitchen Creek because it needs water. It's actually pretty dry. And then it's a benefit for our residents because it lowers the groundwater table north of Bridge Road.
So that's something we are actively working on. I actually had a pretty long meeting yesterday, so I'm pretty up to speed with it, and it would be good before other things fog my brain again. So Commissioner Hurd.
Yes, first of all, has Commissioner Smith's motion been seconded?
No.
Second.
Okay. And then, you know, we all feel our obligation, our responsibility to help these residents and to protect them further. But I would also caution that we need to be very, very careful not to overpromise. We have other, you know, as a result of these flooding problems in Hope Heights, I've received correspondence this past week from residents in Poinciana Gardens, from Manatee Creek residents, from Palm City residents, saying, me too. And just coming up at this, saying, okay, we have $8.6 million is fiscally not responsible because we don't have $8.6 million. If you're going to start making statements like that, then please tell me what part of the CIP you're going to decimate in order to accommodate this project. Let's just be careful and not overpromise because we don't want to underserve. You know, we need to do everything that we can to responsibly protect these residents. So.
Okay, anyhow, Commissioner Smith. Are you done?
I am.
Okay.
Just one last little piece to all of this, I think, relative to the funding and how successful or productive our staff has been through the years. Many times, and Commissioner Hurd is absolutely right, I mean, going into something blindly is not a good idea, but I will suggest and share with you that our staff has done an amazing job through the years I've been doing this. When there is a necessity of a project, whether it's due to an emergency or it's a long-term strategy of dealing with water quality, which we have been very successful in. We have been, I would say, over the top successful in doing 3, 4, 5, 6 to 1 matches relative to the money we put up as a county and going out and getting additional funds to make sure that the project happens. You know, I think back when we did Manatee Pocket and we dredged Manatee Pocket, you know, from the request of the residents that wanted that project done, there was zero money in our budget to dredge Manatee Pocket. And over the next 7 years of doing that project, we got all the money we needed and then some, and removed, I think, 300 and some thousand cubic yards of silt and muck from the Manatee Pocket. So sometimes up front, it doesn't look like it's very clear as to where and how all these things are going to come together. But you have one of the best staffs in the state, I believe, and I've worked with a lot of staffs around the state at getting super creative and super dedicated to making this stuff happen. And Commissioner Hurd's right. I mean, we absolutely shouldn't overpromise, but the overpromise, I think, from the commission and from our staff is that we will do everything humanly possible to make it happen. I think that is the promise you can take to the bank, that we will work as hard. And if you haven't seen, I swear to God, there's got to be 2 or 3 Don Donaldsons and Jim Gordons out there because they seem to always appear and do what's needed to do. But they're really good at what they do. And sometimes it doesn't seem like it on the surface, but do have the confidence that we are, I think like Ed said, you know, we are doing everything we can do behind the scenes to make it happen.
Okay, Mary Kay, do you have a handle on the motion? Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Campy. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. With that,
I'm sorry, just one more point for clarity. Mr. Donaldson, I know you've been working on a timeline and a schedule for the residents. If you could either, I don't know if you email that to them weekly, as these things start to fall into place, if you could just, I know a lot of times you can ease some of the concerns with information. If you could create like at least a once a week real-time update of the schedule. Plus, I like the PowerPoint and all the different points, but if you could put them in the order that they would actually happen, because some people need immediate relief right this minute. So if that's local not-for-profits, let them know that we've reached out to these different not-for-profits, and these people can contact this person at this phone number for some relief, and then work them out in time so that people constantly have a real-time picture of what the time schedule looks like.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
can do that.
Okay, with that, we're going to take our 10:30 break. See you back in 10 minutes.
You are muted.
Mary Kay, you ready? Bob, you ready? Okay. We are on to public hearing number 1, adoption of ordinance amending Article 13, Economic Development ad valorem tax exemption of Chapter 71, Finance and Taxation. Ms. Sarah Woods.
Yes, good morning, members of the board. Sarah Woods, for the record, Martin County Attorney. In 2010, pursuant to Section 196-1195, the board adopted an ordinance providing the board the ability to offer ad valorem tax exemptions to specific targeted industries for 10 years. The ordinance became effective upon approval of a referendum by the voters of Martin County. The law requires reauthorization by referendum every 10 years for the board to continue offering these exemptions. Pursuant to board direction, a referendum to reauthorize the economic development ad valorem tax exemption has been placed on the August 18th, 2020 primary ballot. Notice of this ordinance, which amends our existing economic ad valorem tax exemption ordinance, was published on July 2nd. The ordinance, which is attached to the agenda item, makes a few what I'd call cleanup items, which adds in changes. For example, in the definition, we've added the words firm and partnership. We've tied the expansion of existing business definition to reflect what's actually in the Florida statute. It's really an attempt to make things very, very clear and simple for the potential applicant. We also added a definition of tangible personal property into the definition section, which and make that definition tie back into the Florida statute. We did a little streamlining in the application, not much. I was in subpart 2. We get to subpart 3 in the procedure. And one thing that we added was that there would be either the total revenue available to the county from ad valorem sources or an estimate of such revenue. It just adds for a little bit of clarity depending on the timing of the request. And then we added, I'm at the bottom of page 6 of the draft. I'm in section 71.461, it's the procedure. And we've added a section at the end of that section, a subsection C, that requires the applicant to enter into an exemption agreement with the county. And this was added so that members of the public, as well as the county and the business, would understand what an acknowledgement by the business that the exemption would exist only for so long as the business meets the exemption requirements. And then it would also give the board an opportunity to add any other requirements that you felt would ensure the viability of the exemption and to protect the integrity of the system. We then have we added in a requirement that required that if a business or expansion of an existing business was granted an exemption pursuant to this article, that they had to continue to meet all the exemption requirements during the entire term. That was always in the past assumed, but we felt adding this information, which required that every single year that they get the exemption, they have to meet the requirements of the statute in order to continue to receive the exemption. We also beefed up the revocation of the exemption, and we added at the bottom of subpart 5 that for any year that the taxes may have been exempted and the board finds the business was not entitled to the exemption, the taxes would be recovered and the property appraiser would assist us in that as well. We also asked for to bring the property appraiser into it, and that the property appraiser could deny the exemption upon notice of failure to meet the requirements. It's important to note, I will say that this ordinance wouldn't take effect unless the taxpayer or the voters of Martin County approve the referendum in August. In addition, this is just for those who may not be familiar with this ordinance, this provides the mechanism to grant the exemption. It doesn't grant any exemptions in and of itself. If someone comes in and follows the requirements of this, any exemption comes before this board in the form of an ordinance, and there's a full public hearing and a full disclosure of all the requirements. Have any questions? Happy to answer them.
Any questions? Any motions?
Motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Campy, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Now we're going to public hearing quasi-judicial number 2. Request abandonment of a portion of unopened platted right-of-way lying within St. Lucie Inlet Farms. Mr. Thomas Walker.
Yes, and I'm submitting a copy of the agenda item summary along with my work history and an affidavit of publication for the record.
I'm sorry, forgot. So this is a quasi-judicial thing. Does anybody have any ex parte communications?
If I do, they're filed.
Sure, Heather?
If any, they've been filed.
If I have any, they've been filed. Commissioner
I don't
Camp?
believe I have any. If I do, they've been filed.
Commissioner Hurd?
If I have, they've been filed.
Okay, anyone offering testimony, please stand and be sworn in.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. And you did just turn in the receipts and your work history.
Yes.
Are there any interveners?
No.
Okay.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Tom Walker, County Surveyor for the record. And today, for your consideration, we have a request for abandonment of a portion of unopened platted right-of-way lying within St. Lucie Inlet Farms. Cove Salerno Partners LLC requests that the board consider the abandonment of 19,800.8 square feet of unopened platted right-of-way lying within St. Lucie Inlet Farms, as shown in red on the screen now. Said right-of-way being sought for abandonment is not, nor has it ever been an open road. The petitioner is the owner of the property abutting the subject unopened right-of-way. Of the 3 adjacent property owners, 2 have provided letters of no objection to the abandonment of the right-of-way. Martin County Code does require a privilege fee equal to the value of the county's interest to abandon and vacate county property and roads. However, the board may waive the required privilege fee upon a showing of good cause. The petitioner has requested that the privilege fee be waived, and as a showing of good cause, the petitioner will convey the properties in Exhibits B and C to Martin County for right-of-way, which total 51,425.73 square feet. Those proposed right-of-way dedications are shown in blue and labeled on the location map. There was a typo in the name of the LLC. It should be Cove Salerno Partners LLC, so we will correct the resolution for that. Staff recommends the following action. 1, move that the board receive and file the agenda item summary and all of its attachments for the record as Exhibit 1. 2, move that the board adopt the resolution abandoning a portion of unopened platted right-of-way lying within St. Lucie Inlet Farms, subject with the following conditions precedent. A, conveyance to Martin County for right-of-way dedication, and B, proper publication of a notice of adoption of this resolution. 3, move that the board agrees to waive the privilege fee, finding good cause shown by the petitioner by conveyance of the properties to Martin County for use as public right-of-way. And 4, move that the board authorize the chairman to execute all documents necessary to complete this transaction. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Yes, sir. Oh, you didn't. Go ahead.
Just pending public comment, I'd make a motion to approve staff's recommendation.
Okay, is there a petitioner's presentation? No? I'm sorry, I was looking for the petitioner's presentation, yeah.
I'm Bob Burson, attorney for the applicant. We concur with staff recommendation, and if you have any questions, we're here.
And Bob, apparently what you didn't hear is that I made a motion to approve pending public comment, staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Second.
Okay, do we have any public comment with regard to this? Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
And we're going to go to public hearing quasi-judicial number 1, Cove Salerno Partners LLC, C140-006, request approval of rezoning to a platted unit development, PUD, and a PUD zoning agreement including in the master site plan and phasing plan for the Showcase PUD project. Mr. Peter Walden.
Thank you, sir. And this is quasi-judicial as well?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, this is a quasi-judicial. Do you have any, Mr. Smith, do you have any ex parte communications?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I do, they're filed.
If any, they've been filed.
If I have any that have been filed, Commissioner Campy? If I have any that have been filed. Commissioner Hurd?
And if I have any, they've been filed.
Anyone offering testimony, please stand and be sworn in.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Are there any return receipts to be turned in?
They were turned in at the LPA.
Have you submitted a copy of the agenda and your work history?
Yes, sir.
And are there any interveners?
No, sir.
All right, please proceed.
Thank you, sir. My name is Peter Walden with the Growth Management Department, and I have been sworn in. This is a request by Cove Salerno Partners LLC for approval of the Showcase Project Plan Unit Development, Zoning, and Master Site Plan approval for the development of 88 townhomes and 79 detached single-family homes for a total of 167 residential units and the associated infrastructure. The project is located on an approximate 47-acre undeveloped parcel that fronts Southeast Salerno Road to the north and Southeast Cove Road to the south, just east of southwest corner Canner Highway in Stewart. Included with this application is a request for a deferral of public facilities reservation. On February 18th, 2020, the Board of County Commissioners approved an amendment to the future land use map, changing the existing future land use on the parcel from a state density 2 units per acre to low density residential, allowing up to 5 units per acre. The 167 proposed units on the 47 acres results in a net density of 3.5 units per acre. 2 access points are proposed, one located on Southeast Salerno Road and the other one on Southeast Cove Road. The project is within the primary urban services district. Potable water and wastewater service lines are in place with the needed capacity. The project is proposed to be completed in 2 phases. Phase 1 will consist of the single-family homes and adjacent lakes and supporting infrastructure, including the access to Southeast Salerno Road. An emergency entrance only will be provided on Cove Road as part of Phase 1. Phase 2 will consist of the townhomes, supporting infrastructure, and the full access to Southeast Cove Road. The application is for a master site plan and phasing plan only. No construction is authorized until a final site plan has been approved for the site. This matter was heard before the local planning agency on May 7th. The LPA voted to recommend approval of the application. The application was originally scheduled and noticed to be heard before the board on May 19th. A request to continue the item to today's date was approved at that hearing. There is one minor change I'd like to point out to the master plan. The note on the master site plan regarding right-of-way abandonment to be done by final site plan, which is right here, will be changed. The note has been changed to reflect that the right-of-way has been abandoned, and the board has been given the revised plans for review. The proposed master and phasing plan is in compliance with the comprehensive growth management plan and all applicable land development regulations. Therefore, staff recommends that the board move to receive and file the agenda item summary and all of its attachments, including the staff report, for the record as Exhibit 1, and move that the board approve the request for the zoning district change from RE 1/2A Rural Estate District to Planned Unit Development District, PUD, and approve the showcased PUD zoning agreement, including the master site plan and phasing plan. And that's my presentation. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm looking at page 266, which is an aerial of the future land use map excerpt. And the land to the east, no, you can use that one, that's good. The land to the east is all rural land use, and it looks like it's platted into maybe 20-acre, maybe 10-acre lots. So how are you accomplishing density transition?
The lots are greater than 2 acres, so the density transition issues and policies in Chapter 4 do not apply. So anytime you have either a future land use that requires 2 acres or more per unit, or if the existing parcels are more than 2 acres, then the density transition does not apply.
So if you had a development that was next to an agricultural parcel, the 20-acre wouldn't apply either?
That's correct. But you would not probably have that inside the urban services boundary.
Cove Road is already over capacity and is slated for expansion in 2025, I think. How is this project dealing with that capacity?
Well, I think Morris can go into more detail, but the phase 1 of the project is only going to use Salerno Road as access. And I don't think the phase 2 is slated to be started until 2024. And at that time, then the Cove Road access will be open.
Okay, well, I can ask Mr. Crady that. What are this is a planned unit development, so there have to be benefits to Martin County. I can certainly see the benefits to the developer, but what are the benefits to Martin County?
There's several. There's a donation for sidewalk construction. There's also some expanded wildlife corridors within the project.
Well, that's a benefit for within the project.
Well, and also there is a benefit, it is also within the project for a landscape easements to ensure that the tree canopy is along the street trees is protected in perpetuity, which is something that's pretty important to growth management. As Commissioner Jenkins will attest, the street trees often get removed after years in development, and we're establishing easements over these to protect that, so we'll have a much better tree canopy in this neighborhood than most. And again, maybe Morris can extrapolate on some of the others.
That's all I have.
Okay, Ms. Woods, did you have something to?
If the chair would allow me, I'd like to make a comment after Mr. Crady makes his presentation.
Okay. All right. No, seeing no further questions for staff, Mr. Crady?
Okay. Good morning, Board. For the record, my name is Morris Crady, Senior Vice President with Lucido and Associates.
And you were sworn in.
And I have been sworn in, and you have seen this project before you several times. Last year, we went through the comprehensive plan amendment process to go from the 2 units per acre to 5 units per acre. And at that time, there were some comments from surrounding property owners, and the direction from the board was to address those property owners to the best that we could. And so we spent the last year doing that. And just one point on the public benefits, though, before I get into it. Well, actually, some of the things that we've done in terms of the surrounding property owners is during our meetings with Trey Bell, our first concept plan included 235 homes, and we were doing a product type similar to Crestwood in this quadrant here, putting in some condominium units, and we were doing duplex over the rest. That resulted in about 235 homes on the property. Well, that was a big concern with Trey Bell, and so after meeting with them on a couple of occasions, we reduced the density from 5 units per acre to 3.5 units per acre, or 167 homes. We also changed the product type from the duplex unit and the condominiums to single-family homes and fee simple townhomes on Cove Road that are no more than 2 stories. So in addition to that, we increased the buffer, the building setback along Cove Road, which was 60 feet, including a 30-foot right-of-way donation that we just talked about, to 105 feet, including the 30-foot right-of-way donation. So we have more than a 75-foot buffer between our nearest home and the future right-of-way of Cove Road. And that allows for a significant buffer and a berm along Cove Road that will match the design and quality of the berm and buffering along Trey Bell. Of course, that was one of our projects that we worked on several years ago. And probably most importantly, the project, we agreed to phase the project. One of the things that came out from the Trey Bell meetings was a concern with Cove Road and the fact that the traffic backs up to at the Cove Road Cantor intersection. But before I get into that, going back to public benefits, the one thing I want to make clear is that we can do this project under straight zoning. The RM5 zoning district permits everything that we're doing.
One exception to the lot size.
To lot size?
Yeah, you have 50-foot lots proposed, and it would be 60-foot lots under the RM5, but it's pretty minor.
Yeah, but the real benefit here is that we are agreeing to restrict the density of the project. We're agreeing to restrict the type of development. You know, we've made accommodations to the Trey Bell residents, the Crestwood condominiums next door, into other surrounding property owners that you can't do under straight zoning. So the key ingredient of the PUD agreement is the fact that you're controlling the type of the development so that it's compatible and accepted by the surrounding property owners. You know, even though there is no density transition zone here, you know, we did respect the fact that we do have existing residences here, and I've spoken to both of these individuals. There's an existing berm that runs along here now that was done during the excavation and fill permitting process when the fish ponds were filled in several years ago. And that berm protects these people from any type of water coming off our property. And we also decided to not put any homes along that boundary. You can see we're set back a good 150 feet to our nearest home site from our property line. And along that property line, we're doing additional berms and additional native vegetation so that there'll be a 70-foot wide buffer of native vegetation along the lake edge here. We're doing buffering along here along the lake edge. We consolidated our upland transition zone requirements to move them all to the perimeter so that this, in effect, becomes a wildlife corridor and a native buffer that surrounds the property all the way around. So the PUD, you know, we are doing public benefits like paying for the sidewalk along Salerno Road, but it's also a mechanism that allows you to control the type of development, and that's probably the biggest benefit of this particular PUD. It makes for a better project. With respect to the traffic, one of the concessions that we made, even though we wanted have Phase 1 off of Cove Road. We decided to accommodate the concerns of Traybell residents by moving Phase 1 to Salerno Road. So Phase 1 will consist of the 79 single-family lots that will access only off of Salerno Road. As part of Phase 1, we are doing an emergency access connection to Cove Road and also a pedestrian access connection to Cove Road. But there'll be no vehicular access connection to Cove Road. So we don't plan to get to Phase 2 until 2025 at best. So development will occur off of Salerno Road initially. And you can see also in this project the number of lakes. We have over 20% of the property has lakes. And that's consistent with the type of development we did at Traybell and the type of development we did just east of here in Legacy Cove, which were also PUDs. That's Cove Isle PUD, Cove Lakes PUD, and Traybell PUD. All of those were PUDs, and we were able to design a project that obviously the residents that live there now appreciate. None of those projects flooded. None of those projects caused flooding to surrounding properties. They were all designed in accordance with Martin County's rules and regulations. And they were carefully crafted as a PUD to make sure they met the quality of life standards that Martin County requires. So we could certainly have gone out here and tried to put in apartment units. We could have tried to maximize 5 units per acre and get 235 lots, but we didn't, because we were directed by the board to work out these concerns with the adjacent property owners, and we did that. So we're here today essentially in agreement with staff recommendation and conditions. Now, the concern with Cove Road is not so much the capacity or the widening. The concern, as we narrowed it down to the benefit of you guys and the county engineering department, is the Cove Road Canner Highway intersection. It backs up during peak hours, which is when the school lets out in the morning and in the evening hours. You know, we work with Traybell to show them how that could be fixed, and by adding a dedicated right turn lane and a left turn lane. But more importantly, we decided we're not going to make this issue any worse than it is. So we're going to hold off on doing Phase 1 until at least the Cove Road work is underway. So we made that work on, or that phase on Cove Road Phase 2, and delayed it to allow the county to address the existing conditions. The problems with Cove Road there now are not caused by our project. In fact, we meet concurrency, traffic concurrency on Cove Road, even with our project. The problem is with the intersection. We can't really do anything about that. But we have offered, if it's not fixed by the time that we get to Phase 2, which would be around 2024, we would prepay our impact fees prior or in conjunction with final site plan approval of Phase 2. Under the county's current rules, you're not required to prepay any impact fees. Now, my hope is that that work gets done before 2024, because I assure you there's going to be people here in Traybell and on Cove Road that are continue to pursue the county to fix that sooner than 2024. But we're not going to impact it at all until at least 2024. So, we would agree to an additional condition that would require the prepayment of impact fees in conjunction with final site plan approval of Phase 2, in order to make sure that's fixed before we do it. We have any impacts from our project on that roadway. But that would only be to the extent of our impact fees for Phase 2 at the time of final site plan approval. With that, I'll be glad. Melissa Corbett is here to talk further about drainage if you have any questions, and we'll be glad to answer any other questions you have as far as the project is concerned and the timing and development conditions.
Okay. Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Hurd.
So even though you're going to contribute 167 units to Cove Road, you're not going to pay any, make any contribution toward the intersection of Cove and Canner's expansion?
Our impact fees will be the contribution, but that will be done at the final, when we make the impact. We're not going to have any impact on the road until we get to Phase 2, and that's 2024 at best. So if you want us to agree to a condition, the condition would be we would prepay our impact fees for Phase 2 at the time of final site plan approval to ensure that work gets done. But hopefully you'll find a way to do it before that time, because we're not going to impact it before that time.
How many townhomes are there? How many buildings are there?
88, I think there's 12 buildings.
How many buildings?
12. Those are two-story townhomes, and they're
Have you looked at your site plan?
fee simple.
It says there are 16 buildings.
Well, okay, whatever it is, I'll look at my
Which is
site
it?
plan.
It says 12 and it says 16. So which number is correct?
Well, probably the best way to do it is to count the buildings.
It is 16.
Well, they're numbered.
There's 16 buildings, yes.
Then why does it say there are 12?
That's an error, obviously. The number of units is correct, 88. Yeah, there is, yeah, we made, actually, that was a change we made by creating less units per building. I think at one time we had 8 to 10 units per building, so we just broke it out into less buildings. Or I mean, more buildings and less units per building. But we will fix that.
We can make that revision in post.
Yeah.
Those are the questions I have right now.
Ms. Story.
Yes, Commissioners, I just want to clarify that, because this is the first time I've heard about an additional condition, which can be added, and the board could make a motion to include that. So the language would require the payment of impact fees at the time of the Phase 2 final site plan approval. No conditions attached, that the owner agrees to pay those impact fees at the time of Phase 2 final site plan.
Traffic impact fees.
The traffic impact fees. Okay, I just want to understand, because Commissioners, as you know, currently under the state law, impact fees are not due till the time of building permit issuance. So in order to obligate the owner to do so, we would need to...
Well, just to clarify, one further part of that would be in the event that that intersection is not improved by that time. So
Okay, those are the details
Right,
that I'm
right.
trying to ascertain, if there are any. So
Yeah.
it's not a blanket, and obviously this is a...
I mean, you're going to get the impact fees no matter what, but if the intersection improvements are not in place by the time we get final site plan approval for Phase 2, then we will prepay our traffic impact fees for Phase 2.
So obviously, this is a topic of negotiation between the applicant and the board at this point, whether you want to require absolutely the payment of the impact fees early, or as Mr. Crady has proposed, not payment until they would be subject to if the intersection improvements are already completed. I mean,
Well, funded, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, once they're funded, they're funded,
well,
they'll be
but
completed, yeah.
I don't mean to belabor it.
Yeah, no.
Completed? So the concept is if the
Well-
intersection is, so this is because.
Yes, I
Not having
understand.
the benefit of having been advised of this proposal before this morning, I'm struggling to make sure that we reflect the proposal and that the board understands what the proposal is. That's my obligation.
Sure, I
Would you
understand.
like to take a break and craft some language and then continue the hearing? Would that be
I mean,
helpful?
it's the board.
Commissioner Smith, can you,
It's more of a question that I kind of think that answers I think where Krista's trying to get to. Are there any other traffic-related impacts as a result of the development in Phase 2?
No.
So there are no other improvements the traffic impact fees will go to out on Canner or on Cove or Salerno as a result of Phase 2 getting its final site plan approval?
Not that I'm aware of, but we do have to build turn lanes as part of our site improvements, but that's not paid for by impact fees.
Okay, so Krista, just curious to you, and I understand where you're trying to get.
Okay.
I do. So Morris or Krista, the motion would need to include language that would say upon approval of Phase 2, if the capacity requirements for Cove Roads, left-hand turn lanes, and right-hand turn lanes at the intersection of Cove and Canner are not built by the county upon the approval of the final site plan for Phase 2, then impact fees would be dedicated or prepaid upon approval of the board, this board, County Commission, at the hearing for the approval of Phase 2.
Or within 60 days of final site plan approval?
Yes.
Obviously, they want to make sure it's approved, and then
So
and
once
that would
it's
be fine. And I'm kind of, I apologize, I'm kind of looking at the county engineer to make sure that this makes sense to her as well. So Lisa's in the background.
So, Mary Kay, I don't know if you captured all that. I can go through it again if you want, but relative to a motion, did you get all that, or do you want me to do it again? I don't know if we're done. I mean, the only thing I wanted to make sure is you captured that language, and the only other nuance I would add to that language with what Krista just referenced relative to the payment would be due 60 days post-approval of the final site plan for Phase 2 of the traffic impact fees. But I'll make a motion when it comes to that time. I just want to make sure you had that language, so if I went back and you said, Mary Kay, what did I say? You have it. Krista, does that answer your question?
Yes, I believe so. And Ms. Wixer has gave me a thumbs up that she understands it between us. Yes, I think that would cover it. And that would be included.
Okay.
Prior
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, my presentation is concluded.
Did you? You had your light on. Did you want to say something? Ms. Woods, I'm sorry.
Yes. To switch subjects, the previous agenda item, which was public hearing quasi-judicial 2, which was regarding an abandonment, just so members of the public understand, we took them out of order, and Commissioner Hetherington inadvertently voted on that matter. She's already filed her conflict of interest, so in order to cure this, because she failed to abstain even though she filed her conflict of interest, I'd ask that I could have a motion for reconsideration of the vote on public hearing quasi-judicial 2, have a vote to reconsider.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would move that that the board vote to reconsider quasi-hearing public item number 2.
Public hearing, yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Campy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Then I would ask that the public...
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we accept staff's recommendation for quasi-judicial number 2.
Second. Second.
Now, and then prior to calling for the vote.
And FF Holdings owns 25% of Cove Salerno Partners. I'm an employee of Ferrera Construction, therefore I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we have a motion by Commissioner Campy, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
All
Abstain.
opposed? Motion carries 4-0,
With one abstention.
1
Abstention.
abstention.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Continue with your
Back
current
to
item.
quasi-judicial number 1.
Pending public comment.
Okay. Do we have any public comment with regard to this agenda item? I see none. Commissioner Smith.
Then I'll move approval of public hearing quasi-judicial number 1 with the modification to the PUD agreement that would require the project to pay its traffic impact fees if the completion or the if the construction of the interchange of Cove Road and Canner expansion to two left-hand dedicated lanes and one right-hand lane are not complete. And if they are not built, then the impact fees would be dedicated, or the traffic impact fees would be dedicated to it, and payment would be 60 days post approval of the final site plan for Phase 2. Did I get all that?
That was a mouthful. Mary Kay, did you get that? Okay. Commissioner Heatherton.
Mr. Chair, FF Holdings owns 25% of Cove Salerno Partners, and as a representative of Ferrero Construction, I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Campy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, we have 3 for, 1 against, and 1 abstaining. Okay. Department 1, Office of Management Budget.
One tiny thing before that?
Sure.
Was also the correction made on the number of buildings, or is that going to stand?
Yes, sir. We'll revise the number of buildings on the site. We'll revise the number of buildings on the site plan as well.
Okay, let's talk about management budget items which require board approval. Ms. Manning, we have 3 items.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jennifer Manning, OMB Director. The first item is permission to accept a donation for $12,050 from Historical Society for landscaping of MacArthur Boulevard.
I can hear. You can hear.
Second item is permission to accept the Florida Emergency Medical Services Grant in the amount of $133,000. That is to build a community paramedic mobile integrated healthcare program. We're requesting 1 additional firefighter paramedic, a vehicle, and supplies that will be covered by the grant. It requires a 25% match of $33,000. The third item is permission to accept the local planning agency funding through the Florida Department of Transportation to resurface the Southeast Highway to St. Lucie Boulevard on Indian Street. The grant award is for up to $311,938. The total project would be $483,615, and the match would come from the CIP. That's all the items I have on my agenda today.
Okay, with that, do we have any questions of staff? Ms. Hetherington?
No, Mr. Chair, I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Hetherington, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to Department Number 2, contracts that meet threshold for board approval.
Yes, Commissioners, Ms. Brotherton is not available for this, so I told her I would do this item for her. So on this supplemental, we have, why does it keep doing that? There, we have 1 task order. This is contracts that are over, their amendments are over 10% of the original contract value. This one happens to be for website development that started back in 2014. We did issue a contract to ProMet Solutions to develop that new website. And over the last, going on 6 years now, we will continue to develop that website. This will be the last change order that you will see, because after we get through this portion, we will be migrating to more of a maintenance contract like we do with Train for our air conditioning systems or other things that may have proprietary information or are protected through that process. So this task order was to design the Martin County Golf Course website, and so, like I said, it put it in over the dollar amount so that it would come to the board for approval. And Mr. Merker is here if we need to ask any questions.
Do you have any questions for staff? Seeing none?
I move approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Campy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1.
Can I just make a
Commissioner
quick
Hurd.
comment?
Thank
Chair?
you.
Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just make a
Mr.
quick comment on that?
Okay.
If y'all haven't been out to the golf course, you need to go
Okay,
look. It is absolutely amazing what's going on out there. It's really coming together incredibly well. And I guess I knew, but I didn't know 100% how the stormwater project that we did over and back of the school barn, that the school board worked with us on to allow us to use the land over there, all that ties together into Willoughby Creek. And what's super cool is that about 3/4 the way down through that drainage system, we have tapped into that. So the water has gotten cleaned from the runoff from that whole basin. And we've piped that into our lakes. Actually, I think it only goes into one lake at this point in time at the golf course, but it's intended that all the lakes will be connected. And they're doing all the irrigation from that stormwater runoff. So it was a really cool, just if you get a chance, go on a tour and go see what they're doing. It's fantastic.
I did it yesterday. It was amazing, and the way the stormwater area works with the golf course is cool. And we also, I believe, have future opportunities to expand that project and enhance the aesthetics of the golf course at the same time. So
really cool stuff. Thank you.
Yep. So your turn.
Yes, Mr. Chair, with the permission of the board, I'm going to request that maybe we take an item out of order. Mr. Raines and Mr. Crady and county staff are here for departmental quasi-judicial 1, which is at the very end of our agenda, a request for plat approval for Bridgewater Preserve PUD project. Since everybody's here, I thought it might be nice to go ahead and take it up.
Let's do it. Okay, we got departmental quasi-judicial 1, request for plat approval for the Bridgewater Preserve Planned Unit Development PUD project. Mr. Walden.
This is quasi-judicial?
Oh, wait a minute. Okay. This is a quasi-judicial item. Commissioner Smith, do you have any ex parte?
If I do, they're filed.
Commissioner Heatherington?
If any, they've been filed.
If I have any, they've been filed. Commissioner Campy? I don't have any. Commissioner Hurd?
If I have any, they've been filed.
Have the receipts been turned in?
None required, sir.
Well, you're... Oh, okay. And we have your work history there. So are there any interveners?
No, sir.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you, sir.
Oh,
Again,
wait a
Peter
minute.
Walden.
Hold
with
on
the
a
growth-
minute. Hold on a minute.
Oh, we got to get sworn in.
Thank God Mr. Campy is here to help me. Anybody, please stand and be sworn in.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, again, Peter Walden with the Growth Management Department. And I'd like to say that a full agenda item along with my work history has been turned in as Exhibit 1. This is Bridgewater Ventures LLC has requested the plat approval for the Bridgewater Preserve PUD project. The approximate 215-acre site is to be developed as a 107-lot detached single-family subdivision. The project is located west of Southeast Island Way and extends south to the Palm Beach Martin County line, bordering existing urban development in the town of Jupiter. Included with this application is a request for a certificate of public facilities exemption. The First Amendment to the PUD zoning agreement and the revised master and final site plan were approved by the Board of County Commissioners at a public meeting on March 3rd, 2020. All infrastructure, except for the water and sewer lines, has been completed. The request is to replat the existing development, which has been approved for 36 lots and platted on July 14th of 2006 and recorded in Plat Book 16, page 33 of Martin County. The proposed replat will provide for 107 single-family lots, preserve areas, lake tracts, and common areas consistent with the approved revised master and final site plan. I would like to address a minor mistake made in the staff report. Under the school board review, the report states that the review of the project is NA, or not applicable, because the applicant indicated the application is for a residential care facility. That is incorrect. The project is NA because the project received concurrency, school concurrency, at final site plan. And I apologize if that caused any confusion. Development review staff has found that the application for the plat for Bridgewater Preserve project is in compliance with all applicable regulations. Therefore, staff moves that the board receive and file the agenda item and all attachments, including the staff report, as Exhibit 1, and move that the board approve the replat of Bridgewater Preserve PUD and the contract for construction of required improvements with the accompanying security. And that concludes my presentation. Glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Smith.
I'll move staff's recommendation pending public comment.
Second.
Okay. Does the applicant have a presentation?
For the record, Bob Raines here on behalf of the applicant. First of all, thank you very much for moving us forward. We appreciate it very much. I would just say that, the plat that's been presented to you today is consistent with the approved master site plan and the approved final site plan. And as your staff has indicated, we meet all the rules and the regulations and the requirements of the Martin County Code. Mr. Crady's here. He can answer any of the technical questions if you need so. But other than that, we would ask you to accept staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Any public comment? Seeing none, back to, that was...
You made a motion?
Who made the motion? You made...
Casey seconded it.
Motion made by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
What were they on? Department 3? Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Department number 2, I'd like to move for reconsideration. I have a couple questions that I'm just now noticing.
Okay. We have a motion to reconsider.
I'll move that we reconsider department number 2.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Heatherington, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
So I'm just now noticing task order 11 is the design and development for the golf course website.
Yes, ma'am.
Did we already have funds allocated for the design in that, and then we're increasing them? $500,000 seems like a lot of money to design a website.
Michael?
Commissioner, the amount of the task order is $38,000 for the development of a complete sub-website of the existing Martin County website.
Okay, so it says the purpose, task order 11, this is where I'm getting confused, is for the design and development of the Martin County Golf Course. These items will increase the total contract value to more than $500,000, which requires board approval. Is that because task 1 through 10? So the golf course website is only $38,000?
That is correct. Any contracts over the life of the contract from inception to the time that the contract is retired, if it reaches $500,000, we have to come in front of the board in order to get approval for the additional expenditures in excess of $500,000.
Okay, I'm still not clear. The golf course itself, has it exceeded $500,000 in the website?
No, ma'am, it's going to
So
be a
that
total
is part of the website package, which has task orders 1 through 10.
Correct.
Correct. So the additional amount of $38,000 in task order 11 is what's
specific to the
taken
golf
us
course.
from $987,000 to $1 million.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You can see, Commissioner, too, as you look at this, we put the day that the board approved these other task orders, And if you would, we can give you more information on that because it would have had an agenda item just like this. So it would have explained what each of those change orders were for. And this one's specifically for the golf course, and you're absolutely right. This is just for the $38,000 for the golf course.
Okay, it was, the purpose was confusing me. So the change order is basically $38,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Today? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
But just for clarity, Sharon, we would have had to, on task order 10, we would have had to come back to the commission because it was already over 500,000.
Yes, we did. We came back to you on those last 3, 8, 9, and 10 because of that, because it went over the 500,000 threshold.
Okay. Thanks, that answered.
So do we need to make a motion to reapprove?
I would think so.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I would move approval. Are you set with that?
No, I'm good, yeah, thank you.
I would move approval of department number 2.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Campy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1. Commissioner Hurd dissenting.
Thank you.
And with that, it's lunchtime.